to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All those we ask so that we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Please be seated. Would you like to do the roll call, Commissioner? Thank you for stepping in Commissioner Wang's roll call.
Oh, roll call.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have the list. So can I make it up?
Sure.
Commissioner Wang.
He's asked to be excused. Mhm.
Okay. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Commissioner Jain. Here. Commissioner Chahal.
Here.
Chair Casey.
Here.
Commissioner O'Halloran.
Here.
Commissioner Kelly.
Motion to excuse Commissioner Wang.
Any
And
seconds?
Reinhardt.
Oh,
Reinhardt is
And
coming.
Reinhardt, Brandon?
Oh, he's not coming too?
Well, he's here.
Let's wait for.
Maybe.
Let's wait a little bit
Let's
for
wait for him.
Commissioner Reinhardt before we start going over the consent items.
Okay.
So, any seconds on the motion?
Second to excuse Commissioner Reinhardt.
No, Wang.
Okay,
Wang.
Commissioner
Yeah.
Wang. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, right, so let me read these procedures. Okay, we're on. Hearing procedures. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission directs all activity during the hearings. All comments shall be addressed to the commission. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants will be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals following staff presentation of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 4 minutes, and the applicant is allotted up to 5 minutes for rebuttal of comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of the public hearing, although the commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Special procedures and time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Appeal of commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. Okay. Any requests to continue or accept an item on the agenda? Okay, none. All right, so now we're getting to the consent calendar. So would anyone like to make a motion to excuse?
So, well, I would like to pull the minutes.
Before we go
Yeah.
there, I'd
We
like to excuse
excuse
Commissioner
Commissioner Reinhardt.
Reinhardt since he's not here to.
I move to excuse Commissioner Reinhardt.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Reinhardt is excused. Okay, so, consent calendar.
So I would like to pull consent calendar item A, the Planning Commission minutes.
Okay. I guess that's the only item. Okay, so, Commissioner Jain has the floor on the minutes.
So the minutes failed to note that Commissioner Chahal was going to be the new vice chair and that Commissioner O'Halloran will remain the secretary.
No,
Who's the secretary?
Commissioner Wang was going to be secretary.
Commissioner Wang? Okay. Commissioner Wang is the secretary. So those need to be added. And I believe that's everything. Oh.
Okay, we've made a we have approved a motion to excuse Commissioner Reinhardt, but he's here now, so do we need to remove do we need to reverse the decision? No. Okay. All right.
I think you'll just note that when he arrived, right, late.
Okay.
So with that change, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for July 26, 2017.
Any second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go to the hearing item. Since Commissioner Wang is not here, and would Commissioner Jane kindly continue to act as our treasurer?
Okay, this is item number PLN 2016-12359 slash CEQ 2017-01030, location 1700 Russell Avenue, a 1.7 acre project site located on the south side of Russell Avenue, approximately 620 feet east of Thomas Road, APN 104-14-147 and 104-14-151. Project site is zoned heavy industrial, MH, applicant Ray Hashimoto. Adoption of a mitigated negative declaration and approval of a use permit to expand an existing air separation and gas production facility to increase the production of hydrogen for delivery to hydrogen fueling facilities. Project planner is Debbie Fernandez.
Thank you.
Oh,
Would staff like to
Staff
give a
recommend,
briefing? Oh, thank you.
Thank you. This is a conditional use permit for a hydrogen fueling facility at 1700 Russell. General plan designation is low intensity office and R&D. The zoning is MH, heavy industrial. It's in a mixed light and heavy industrial neighborhood. And it's a 1.7 acre site that's attached to the larger 12 acre site for Air Products. The following slide shows typical conditions in the area, including the project site. Mostly one-story tilt-ups. The uses on the 1.7 acre site are almost exclusively outdoors. There's a canopy in the center that will be removed as part of the project. Next slide. So the use permit is to develop a hydrogen fueling supply hub and involves the installation of a number of pieces of equipment that the applicant team will talk about. The important thing to recognize here is that operations are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People are on site only from 8 to 5, and remote monitoring will happen from the Air Products site next door for the remainder of the day. So important to recognize as part of your deliberations. Next slide, please. So the proposed site plan shows 2 employee parking spaces, a relocated fence, the canopy to be removed, and the equipment on site. Next slide, please. So there is going to be front landscaping and a new sidewalk along Russell Avenue. So we have our environmental consultant here, and she can talk to the impacts that were identified, but mostly air quality, cultural resources, GHG, and hazardous materials. Mitigation measures were identified for all of the impacts, and so staff has processed a mitigated negative declaration. And we've received 3 comment letters, which we can talk a little bit more about. So staff's recommendation is to adopt the MND and to approve the use permit with the attached conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Well, there will be discussion of the comment letter.
Yeah.
Any questions to the staff? No?
I have a question again, may come up with the application. Is there any, I'm sorry.
Commissioner O'Halloran.
Is there any additional water consumption that we need to concern ourselves with?
I'm going to let the applicant speak to that as part of their process.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, would the applicant like to present?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Ray Hashimoto with HMH Engineers, and I'm representing Air Products, who's the applicant on the project. And for the record, I'll note that I am a registered lobbyist in the city of Santa Clara, so got that on the record. I have tonight with me several representatives from Air Products, Darren Gurman, Michael Chow, who is the on-site facilities person, Ian Anderson. Are you also local, Ian? As well. John Comenti is also here, and Matt Savitsky is also here. Darren Gurman is also here, as I mentioned him before. They're all here to answer technical questions that I probably won't be able to answer very clearly. But certainly we're excited about this project. As the staff stated, this is a program to provide hydrogen distribution to at their existing facility in North Santa Clara. This new facility provides service to hydrogen fueling facilities throughout the Bay Area. And it's an exciting time because that's really, it's really an alternative fuel source that's really being put into service. Fuel for the hydrogen fuel cells will be increasing demand over the next years in the close future. Sales of hydrogen fuel cells are going to increase in Silicon Valley. As you may have noticed, Toyota is advertising their hydrogen cell cars, so you see it being advertised as well. We wanted to acknowledge the letter that Commissioner Jane put together as part of the environmental comments. We've put a written response that was in your packet. We can go back and summarize that again, or Nora can summarize that, but we think we've addressed those. He may have other questions, but we can take them after I get done with my presentation. We read the conditions of approval, and we're in concurrence with staff and would respectfully request that you approve the use permit. With that, we're here to answer questions.
Okay. Is somebody else in the applicant's team going to present the what's actually going to be built and how this facility is going to,
Darren, do you want to
what
take
it's
that?
going
Just
to
go ahead
do
and summarize what
how
you're
it's going to
you're
be
phasing and
operated in a little more depth?
So like we said, it's going to be setting up the hydrogen hub facility to load trailers to deliver to the HES fueling stations.
Thank you. Can you mention your name again, please,
Sorry,
for the record?
my name is Darren Gurman. I'm the project manager for getting the special use permit approved.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have it broken down based on 3 different phases for the upcoming demand that the fueling stations would have. Phase 1 is to install a liquid pumping system where we would deliver hydrogen from Sacramento to the transfill section. That would then be put into 2 trailer trucks that would then deliver it to the hydrogen fueling stations around the surrounding area. As demand would increase, we then have a phase 2, which is the installation of a PHG 830, which is a steam methane reforming technology to create hydrogen on site that would eliminate the need for trucking liquid hydrogen in from Sacramento. It would be produced right on the facility. The filling would remain the same through a filling stanchions where the 2 trailer trucks would hook up to, fill, and then would again go out to the different fueling stations. Again, as increased looking forward, as the market grows, cars are produced, we then also have room for what we call phase 3, which is a second PHG hydrogen generator that would double the capacity to create hydrogen and thus be able to supply more of the fueling stations in the Northern California region. So that's kind of the overall plan of the equipment, and the phasing of that is very dependent on the market and the demand from the car manufacturers themselves. We're also planning, working with the CEC and the stations that they are funding with First Solar and Shell to create that demand in the area.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Commissioner Jane.
Yeah, so I have to admit I'm not a big fan of fuel cell vehicles. They're no more efficient than just burning the natural gas in an internal combustion engine, and electric vehicles are far more efficient. But my concern is related to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District letter, which suggested that if the methane comes from fracking or from other conventional sources, there's issues with leakage, and the greenhouse gas multiplication factor is a factor of 80. So methane is 80 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than CO2. And so related to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District letter, I was wondering, had you considered using renewable natural gas, say from landfill capture, as opposed to from fossil fuel sources?
Let me make sure I understand the question. So this plant is going to be generating hydrogen from methane from the fossil fuel source? Oh, okay.
My name's John Committee with Air Products. We're using natural gas and converting that to hydrogen. A contaminant is methane. So so we're using natural gas, and where that comes from, it sure could come from fracking. On your renewable question, the state of California dictates that you have to have 33% renewable hydrogen content for our stations. So, and how we do that is we buy renewable gas, so biomethane, from landfills in Pennsylvania, and then we can prove that it's connected via the pipeline, the Western Electricity Coordinating Grid. That's actually a natural gas pipeline grid, even though it has the word electricity in there. We can track those molecules from Pennsylvania into California. Then on our stations, when we dispense, we can track how much our stations dispensed, or to the end customer, and then we sum it up, and then 33% of that has to be renewable. There are a couple stations that are 100%, so that's how we're doing it right now. We are also looking at being able to do this process in-state, so using natural gas resources that are renewable in-state, but those are still projects.
So I'm sorry, I'm tracking renewable portfolio standards for electricity, and so you're saying there's a similar renewable portfolio standard for natural gas in the state, which is why you're subject to a 33% renewable natural gas requirement. And will that go to 50 and 100% as the state changes its renewable portfolio standard?
Yes, as this demand for hydrogen grows, the state is going to move along the requirement of the renewable content, how much it has to be. Right now, from the California Energy Commission, when they do their grant for proposals, or grant for opportunity, and they're going to release funds to build a hydrogen refueling station, the station owner is signing up that 33% is going to be renewable. That 33% renewable right now can be brought in out of the state, because actually the state does not allow biomethane renewables to enter the natural gas pipeline. And so the state's working to get that fixed, and once that happens, then we can start working on in-state supplies.
Okay, I didn't see any commitment to that, but I guess you're saying that's just state law. I didn't see any. Okay.
That's in the California Energy Commission requirements, and so these grants for opportunities, that's a contractual requirement.
Okay.
My second question is that there's a fair amount of electricity consumed at this facility. Is that really just for running the pumps for compression and liquefaction?
Yeah,
Is that
well,
correct?
the electricity consumed, the electricity consumed to liquefy the hydrogen is really in Sacramento. What we have here in Santa Clara is a cryogenic compressor, and that electrical consumption, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, they won't even see it impact what they're using on the plant. It's a fly on the back of an elephant for what the electricity we use to compress the hydrogen.
I'm confused. The first phase is to bring the hydrogen from Sacramento.
Yeah.
But the second phase and third phases are one reformer, then a second reformer, right?
Yeah.
But the electricity consumed on site is substantial from what I saw in the megawatts.
This is Darren Gurman again. So the power usage, it's about 485 kilowatts per PHG per
Okay.
train.
Okay.
That amount of power is for the PHG unit itself, and then the two compressors
Sure.
to get them up to pressure. The 1 megawatt total would be the both PHGs running and 2 trains of compression at the same time. So the total power usage for at the end of phase 3 would be the 1 megawatt number.
Will be 1 megawatt, basically continuous, right?
Yes, as they're running. There's going to be some kind of back and forth, I think, between the compression stages, but yeah, more or less continuous when it would be up and running 100%.
And so that would work out to be like 6,000 megawatt hours of electricity over the year, right? 7,000 megawatt hours of electricity, so 7 gigawatt hours, right? I was wondering if you had, you're buying that under the current Silicon Valley Power renewable portfolio standard, which is probably 25% currently, going to 30% by 2020. Have you considered using 100% renewable electricity for your facility?
That would be something, Michael, can you comment on that as far as the renewable energy for the facility itself? You're talking about the ASU plant, the higher air products facility?
I'm talking
Or
about,
just
you're
the
saying that the hydrogen is 1 megawatt, right?
Correct, correct.
So I was wondering if you had considered using 100% renewable energy for your hydrogen facility.
I do not, when we had our discussions with Silicon Valley Power, I don't remember speaking about that specifically, to be honest with you. I don't know what the real difference would be between getting the renewable energy from SVP versus the normal kind of electricity rates we were using that the ASU is consuming.
Because I'm just, what I'm trying to say is that hydrogen is considered to be a very green fuel source. And yet, if you're using fossil fuels for reforming and you're using fossil fuels for compressing and liquefaction, then it's not so green as we think. And I was wondering if you would consider committing to 100% renewable electricity for the hydrogen portion of your facility.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the authority to commit to that as just the project leader, but it would be something we could go and see, you know, talk to Silicon Valley Power and see what the differences are versus the renewable energy.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, Commissioner Kelly.
Just a couple of questions. Once you're producing on-site, is that going to be from fossil sources, or are you going to use clean sources to produce the hydrogen? Once you are producing on-site versus importing it in from Sacramento?
Can you speak up to into the mic?
Sorry. I believe that's kind of the same question as what John had answered with the fact that we're using 33% renewables now versus what California's requirements are. And that
It'll remain 33%.
yeah, our renewable sources of that natural gas would change as the state laws change. It's basically based on demand for the hydrogen, right? So they're trying to balance the amount of renewables versus the amount of hydrogen that's going out as the CEC releases funds for future stations. So we would follow the California state laws going forward.
And then, how often, because hydrogen is very flammable, how often do you have safety inspections on site?
There would be normal PM tasks for the hydrogen equipment. It's based on the type of equipment, basically for equipment failures. Things like safety relief valves on the hydrogen tanks are normally PM'd like every year to do set checks to make sure the safety valves are working. There's very stringent safety laws around the storage of hydrogen, the tanks, the trailers, and again, that's mostly required by the DOT and the commission that kind of runs that. So we, as Air Products, are required to meet those standards of what the gas laws have created for hydrogen, plus the normal operation PMs, because we don't want the equipment to fail, obviously. So you try to keep up with that task through, we have a whole SAP system that automatically alerts the operators for upcoming preventive maintenance tasks to make sure that there's no failures on site. So that's kind of the basis of our safety program. We have a very high dedication to safety on all of our facilities, and that's kind of the number one thing we will make sure that all that stuff gets followed. We've been having a bigger push, even more than before, to spend as much money as you need to make sure that plant is safe. That comes from our CEO all the way down. So there's, I don't know the exact numbers or times that all the equipment gets checked, but there are standards that are followed for the hydrogen gas laws and the industry standards of the safety checks.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Chahal.
So, coming back to I'll expand on the safety part of it. What can be the worst case scenario? Because there is a neighborhood close by, and other thing I'm noting is the general plan designation mentions the low density office and R&D. There can be office and R&D building right next to your building. So what can be the worst case scenario, worst case accident happening in this facility for which a neighborhood or that your neighbor should be aware of?
This is, again, John Comittee. Yeah, appreciate that question. So the tank is designed, for example, you could build a bonfire underneath the tank. The tank, it's double insulated, so there's an outer tank and inner tank. You could build a bonfire under it, and then the safety relief valves are going to relieve as the liquid hydrogen converts to gas and relieve the pressure, and no incident. Need to keep in mind that hydrogen is 25 times lighter than air, so it's going to shoot up. The vent stack height is such that when there's enough static electricity or something, it can catch that plume on fire, and you'll see heat striations. But the vent stacks are tall enough that it cannot impact human beings on the ground. So that's the worst case release scenario. The other thing to protect the neighbors is that the hydrogen was sited setback distances. So for example, the tank has to be 75 feet away from the property line to handle a tragic or an event like that where you have a worst case release. So there's code protections on distances, and then how we protect the tank. There has to be bollards around it. The fire marshals are very well versed on the National Fire Protection Codes 55 and NFPA 2 that dictate how you site and situate a liquid hydrogen system. So that's not new, and the fire marshals, they know what they're doing and what to look for and what to ask for.
Okay, and we're talking about the hydrogen only right now, end product as such. During the process, if there is a intermediary process, let this breakdown of an intermediary process, is there any poisonous or gas which can leak in the neighborhood and have an impact on the neighborhood?
So So I'm referring to the liquid hydrogen tank.
Yeah,
phase
that's the
one.
final product.
Okay.
I'm talking about when you are preparing the final product from, let's say you're getting the natural gas in reforming
Oh,
process.
in the
Right.
PHG.
Yes,
You mentioned methane as one.
right. So
Yes.
during that process, what can be the scenario, let's say, particular gas leaks in the neighborhood?
Right.
So,
Well, there's really no toxic gases that are going to get released. The equipment itself is, run with a DCS system for pressures, temperatures, analytics. So at any time there's any kind of upset in the normal process, the PHG would shut down automatically on its equipment. I think besides the emissions that we're going through in the CEQA documentation, we have many PHGs installed around the country and around the world. There's really no other toxic byproducts that would come out of that unit itself that would affect the neighbors in any way.
okay. My next question is, gentleman mentioned about the fire department, they have a code. Does Santa Clara Fire Department have to do something in addition, like they have to add on something, additional equipment to take care of something, some accident on this site? Or it's the regular stuff, whatever they have right now is good enough?
I can speak to that. When we had the initial meetings 12, 15 months ago, when we met with the fire department, the main thing here is that the amount of liquid hydrogen, which is what the concern is from a fire standard, is under the PSM, what they call the PSM values, where it's kind of the cutoff for the next level of rules, regulations, different responses by the fire company. So staying under that threshold, which the tank that we're installing keeps under the amount of liquid hydrogen on site, that then does not require any special laws to kick in or any other safety requirements to happen. So our main goal is to stay under that PSM level to stay out of all those extra safety requirements. So it's just about the amount of liquid hydrogen on site, and that is kind of the rule that the fire department looks at. Once we had gone with them what the amount of liquid was going to be, they had no other concerns around the installation of that tank. We do have marked up, I believe, on the plans for the entry lines in that the fire company would be able to follow. So ingress and egress kind of lines on the pavement to make sure that area stays open for a response. But there would be no other extra safety equipment or procedures that the fire company would have now that was any different than the small liquid hydrogen tank that's currently sitting on that facility today.
Okay. I drove through the site today, and I noticed the address is 1700 Russell, but you also have exits and entries on the other street. I forgot the name. Norman Street. So would you be exclusively using Russell, or you will be giving all the plan to fire department, okay, this is how we are doing ingress, egress of the, how you take the gas from there and other stuff? Because I saw multiple entries, multiple gates on both the sides.
Right. The Norman Avenue address is for the air separation plant today. The 1700 Russell will be just for the hydrogen production facility, and the in and out from that plant will only be from Russell Avenue.
Russell Avenue. Okay. Okay.
And we noticed, I mean, if you look at with our meetings at the PCC, with the fire department, there wasn't anything special that was required of us except for lining out the ingress and egress fire turnaround, which we provided. If you look at the condition of approval, I don't see anything specific from fire department in terms of any additional safety measures in our permit. So, obviously Air Products has worked closely with the fire department for their whole facility, and I think that they're going to follow whatever the fire marshal is asking us to do now. So we think that we feel very comfortable with how the fire department is handling and the safety measures and the review of our site. So.
I do have one question. I'm not sure you want to answer that or not. From the city fiscal point of view, are you, when you are delivering the liquefied hydrogen to Greater Bay Area, right, are you invoicing that in Santa Clara County for sales tax purposes, or are you invoicing at a place where it is being delivered? I'm talking from the point of view of, does City of Santa Clara get some sales tax revenue out of your business? Point of sale.
It's at the point of sale.
Point of sale. So wherever it will be delivered. Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. And my next comment, I'd gone through some of the questions Mr. Serge Jain asked. They were very informative. Thank you for that. And I do have a question for staff, especially keeping in view that our general plan designation and the zoning designation do not match on this side. And I was like, I'm not sure when it will take time so that both of them are in a sync for the long term, because the general plan designation mentioned low density office R&D, and this is heavy industry. So bringing up a low density office and R&D right next to industrial project like this, I don't know, does that make sense, or when will we looking at so that we have a proper merger of zoning and our general plan guidelines?
Right, so you're pointing out that there is a lack of consistency between the general plan and the zoning and what to do next.
Yeah.
And in this case, staff is comfortable with the development that's proposed because most of the improvements are skid mounted, no buildings are being proposed. This is the kind of relatively interim use that could be acceptable in inconsistent zoning and general plan situations such as this.
Okay, but my ultimate question is, how, are we working on to make sure in future our general plan and zoning comes to a one goal, and one area has to be designated where we can have like uniformity of the project we plan to do that?
Yeah, sorry for not answering the question that you were asking. Yes, as a part of the zoning code update, we're going to be revising our zoning map to be consistent with the general plan map.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioner O'Halloran?
Is this on? Okay. Actually, just to follow up on Raj, I haven't. Yes. Here, I hear it. Commissioner Raj, are we talking about a zoning change that needs to go to the council?
For this, thank you. For this project, it's only a conditional use permit. And again, staff is comfortable that it's consistent with the general plan and with the zoning.
When you say conditional, what does that exactly mean? It's not temporary. This looks pretty permanent.
Right, but it's something that's a discretionary approval by the Planning Commission.
The other question, I have no knowledge of the technical of the hydrogen, so it's very good to get me to look at it more. But the only thing I really had concentrated on was the memo from the Bay Area Air Quality Group, which was supporting the change. It does mention that they are urging the city to prioritize the use. What does that mean exactly? How is the city involved in this actually?
Prioritize the use of clean natural gas.
Just approving somebody doing it, or are we involved in any way besides Air Products doing for the end use? Are we involved in that in any manner?
To my knowledge, no. To the extent that the city has an electric utility, that might be a situation where the city could have more leverage over clean power or not, but they're talking about natural gas in this case.
Would we have any use for it? Would SVP have any use of the end product besides the transportation piece that we're talking about?
Any use for the hydrogen? Okay. Not to my knowledge, and that's something that I could ask SVP.
Okay, and again, I have no knowledge of it, so I appreciate it.
Anyone else? Okay, I have several questions. The first question is to the staff. So, in a situation like this, where the the applicant wants to build facilities that handles chemicals. What part of our city is responsible for ensuring safety and all standards are being adhered to?
Thank you. It's the hazardous materials section of the fire department.
It's a fire department,
Right.
hazardous, okay. And, let's see. Is this, if the use permit were to be issued, is this going to come up in front of the commission again for a periodic review?
That would be part of the conditions of approval, and let me take a look here. I don't see a condition for a periodic review under community development.
So, once we give the permit, then it's on forever?
Right, but the fire department does periodic inspections and make sure that the safety equipment is up to date. Their review is regular.
Is that the
periodic.
standard practice?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. The next question is for the applicant. So Commissioner Chahal asked you about, are there any other chemicals involved in the refinery and storage process besides hydrogen that might be hazardous? And one thing you mentioned was that methane is a byproduct, and methane, I understand, is flammable. So is that something that's addressed as well in your safety procedures and facilities design?
Yes, I mean, part of the units themselves, again, would be designed to make sure that there is no overproduction of that would become a hazard to either the production or anything leaking out of the equipment to the surrounding areas. So that would be all contained in the control system and the way the unit is being run to produce the hydrogen.
Okay. And the next question is more about the product itself, the hydrogen. So your facility is going to be supplying the entire Bay Area?
Yeah, John can finish up my comment. This right now is based on the proposed stations that are going in the next year or two. There's already a couple stations in the area, but the main goal of this is to be able to supply the San Francisco and then the greater Northern California area moving forward.
So right now there's 9 stations in this area. Probably in about 15 months there'll be a total of about 16 stations, and the growth is going to be in the Bay Area or San Francisco area, and then a couple in Sacramento, and then some more down here in the South Bay Area.
You're talking about stations for fuel cell vehicles?
Yes.
Okay. Is this going to be the only facility in Northern Cal? Well, one in Sacramento, the one in Santa Clara. Are you building any other facilities, or are your competitors building any other hydrogen generating facilities or in the Bay Area?
No, I think Air Products isn't. So our primary focus is Santa Clara right now. Competitors, they might potentially use where they're located at refineries, like in the Martinez area or Rodeo area. That's where they could potentially pull hydrogen from.
So there are several players in this business
market,
already
yes.
in the Bay Area. Okay. So are your products going to be used just for fuel cell vehicles, or how about like stationary fuel cells like Bloom Energy?
Yes. So it is used in stationary fuel cells and stationary power. And a really good example is in Southern California, where Toyota has a 1 megawatt generator that pulls natural gas, creates electricity. Our hydrogen is also used in the semiconductor area as part of the chip making process. And then and this is really a new market for us, is fuel cells for vehicles.
I see. And so when I read a little bit about the hydrogen generating facilities, and I guess the scariest scenario is where there's a hydrogen leakage and it mixes with oxygen, then you're talking about explosive situation. And it sounds like what you described in terms of the scrubbing and releasing of the leakage is supposed to prevent that situation. But can you talk to that a little bit more, please?
Sure. So on the liquid hydrogen tank, so this phase one, it's liquid hydrogen. That's all there is in the process. It's literally a thermos with liquid hydrogen in it. So oxygen isn't going to get to that until it releases to the atmosphere, where there's 20% oxygen. So we're good there. And then on the PHGs, which that's where we take steam methane or natural gas, steam methane reformation, create your hydrogen. There again, oxygen isn't present in that process. So really, oxygen isn't really a main concern. I mean, we're protected against that being a concern.
Because of the way your process works.
Yes, we're not creating the oxygen. It's only available in the atmosphere. So you'd have to have a leak or something to have that oxygen concern.
But any leakage is released directly into the atmosphere. There is no area in your facility where the hydrogen could accumulate.
No, it'll get vented through a vent stack to the atmosphere.
Okay.
So you got to have your vent stack has to be the right height, so that because it very likely could catch on fire. You won't see a flame, you'll see heat striations, and it's got to be tall enough that the heat can't reach a person and cause harm. Yeah, we have flame detections, gas leak detection that will automatically shut down equipment.
Okay. So I meant to ask this earlier, but is there any gas refining facility in not hydrogen, but gas, natural gas, or gas fuel refining or processing facility inside Santa Clara? And the reason I'm asking this question is because I hear that our fire department is supposed to ensure the safety of any new facilities, but then I hear about other parts of the country where a large volume of fuel gets transported through their cities. I've heard about massive explosions that have killed a huge number of people. You hear about facilities in other parts of the Bay Area that release toxic gases, and residents are asked to stay in their home. Do we need to worry about any situations like that? Not just with this applicant, but any other facilities. And it's an issue that, because of this application, it made me think about potential issues that this kind of chemical facilities could raise.
To my knowledge, and this is completely without looking at information sources, I'm not aware of any fuel refining facilities in the city of Santa Clara, but the heavy industrial district does allow uses like that, and it would be subject to a conditional use permit, and you could weigh whether that was appropriate for the city of Santa Clara at that time. The biggest source of fuel, as in some sort of flammable material that I can think of, are the fuel tanks for the airport that are just across 101. Those were approved in the city of San Jose. I can't think of situations where, well, I think it's up to Air Products to talk about what else goes on their 12-acre site, and to explain what the rest of the complement of activities they do on Russell Avenue is.
Okay. Thank you.
Matt Savitsky with Air Products. You did mention toxic spills. One benefit of hydrogen is it's completely benign to the environment. That's one of the reasons for the interest in hydrogen as a fuel.
Thank you. I have another question. I guess the fuel cell vehicles are aimed at satisfying California's zero emission vehicle requirements. If you use fossil fuels to generate hydrogen, is that relevant to the zero emission vehicle requirements?
Yes, so what you gain is that the car is basically using hydrogen to create electricity, so now you're getting, the powertrain is electrical. So you're actually getting double your miles per gallon because you have an electrical powertrain. So the California Energy Commission releases a report, it's AFRTVB, so Alternative Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program report. So in that report, they state that fuel cell vehicle is 50 to 70% less greenhouse emissions on wells to wheel compared to internal combustion engine. So so you're right. I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive. We're taking natural gas, we're making hydrogen, and it's better than if you use gasoline or natural gas internal combustion engine. And the game changer is the electrical power chain on the car.
So it's not just the emission from the vehicle, but from the entire process, from the production of hydrogen all the way through the end point where the vehicle consumes the energy.
Yes, that's the wells to wheels part. That's how the state of California calculates it.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Jane.
Well, I believe that the state of California's numbers are wrong, that the wells to wheels is basically the equivalent of an internal combustion engine, but the advantage is that when you burn the hydrogen in a vehicle that's driving around, there's no particulates and pollution to the people that where the car is driving. So if it's in a city, there's no pollution there. But just out of curiosity, these refueling stations where the fuel cell vehicles will be refueling, are they owned by Air Products or are they regular gas stations? Where are they?
They're regular gas station owners.
Okay, just curious, yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, public, let's see, the next, anyone in the public would like to speak? None? Okay, so.
Motion to close public hearing? Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Discussions, Commissioner Jane.
I believe that this will not go to council. Our
That's correct.
recommendations here are final. Okay. I don't know if there is any opportunity. I believe that Air Products didn't really discuss with Silicon Valley Power the option and costs of using 100% renewable electricity. I'm not sure whether there's any conditions or any recommendations we can put into this at this point.
You could condition the project, or you could recommend that they look into using renewable or the renewable power standard from SVP.
Would that be a condition, though? That would be a fixed condition?
That would be a condition, but yeah, I think that part of if you added that condition, you might want to also add a little bit to the resolution as to why you're adding that condition.
Okay.
Just,
All right.
Include a finding in the reso that explains that.
Okay, I support Commissioner Jane's suggestion that use of renewable electricity be reviewed, and I propose having perhaps a 1-year or 2-year review where the applicant can report back on their progress toward using renewable electricity. Anyone else?
I'm okay with that.
So,
Commissioner Jane.
so I would propose to approve, let's see, we have two.
First we need
Yes.
to talk to the
So I propose that we approve the resolution to adopt the MND.
Second that.
Okay, any discussions? All in favor?
Aye. Now I approve the resolution for the conditional use permit with the proviso that in phase 2 of the project, that Air Products consider using 50% renewable energy for their electricity consumption.
Second that.
I have a question about the motion. So, what would be the mechanism for reviewing the condition that we're applying, or was that Commissioner Jane is suggesting? Is my voice coming through? Okay.
Thank you. You could add in addition a 2-year review. Condition for a 2-year review.
Would anyone like to make an amendment? Would Commissioner Jane would like to amend his motion?
Yeah, so I would like to recommend that before embarking on phase 2 of the project, which I believe is 3 years from now, that we review the option for using 50% renewable energy for the electricity portion of the project, for the sole reason that hydrogen is perceived as being a clean source of energy, whereas when it's being generated using electricity that comes from fossil fuels and methane that comes from fossil fuels, it's not as clean as one may think. And the second thing is that cars that run on hydrogen that's sourced from fossil fuels are not really any more efficient than internal combustion engines that run on pure methane.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to comment?
If you can open the public hearing, I'd just like to make a comment and maybe a suggestion.
Do I need to open the? No,
It's
I don't
okay?
think we
All
need
right.
to open the.
To make it definitive, would it be an idea to go ahead and say prior to issuance of any sort of building permit, mechanical permit for phase 2 that we would look into, as opposed to before embarking? It seems like if there's a permit, then that would be a definitive time prior to getting that issue that we look at this percentage of using renewable energy through SVP.
That seems fine to me, yeah.
It just would be,
Before the
it'd just be more
permit
definitive.
For the, before the
Yeah.
permit for phase 2.
And
Yeah.
for clarification, is this going in the conditions of approval?
Yes.
Yes.
Second the amended motion.
Okay, so I would like to restate the motion on the floor, which is, I'm not sure what, I'm a little confused. Maybe the Commissioner Jane would like to restate the motion so that everyone is clear on what motion we're putting on the floor.
Okay, so I am recommending that we approve the conditional use permit with the amendment that before permits are granted for phase 2, that Air Products have a discussion with Silicon Valley Power with the goal of using a 50% renewable energy for the electricity portion of the facility, of the steam reforming of hydrogen. And I don't have to restate the motivation for why. Okay.
So the motion is to just suggest that they have a discussion, no review by the city or this, I mean, SVP is a different arm, different from the planning department or the planning commission.
Report back to us is the important part that they.
Well, I guess we could have them come back before the planning commission, before we issue that permit. That would be probably my preference.
What would be an appropriate procedure without overburdening the applicant?
Well, that depends on the planning commission's objective, and if you wanted to be able to review that, yeah, put it back before yourselves. But if it's to just review that and review the feasibility with staff, you could also do that, and that would probably be more efficient for the applicant's process.
Are there any costs associated if we bring it back to Planning Commission before we issue the permit for Phase 2? Does the applicant bear any costs?
I'm going to ask our support staff whether or not we would be charging for things like noticing for a 2-year review. I'm not 100% sure, honestly.
Because I don't want to burden
Just to
the
be clear, when I
applicant with
say
any cost.
unduly burden, I meant unduly holding up their project or to create uncertainty about the future viability of their projects, etc. I wasn't talking about the fees that they might need to pay to the city. Okay, Commissioner Chahal.
What I can suggest is if the applicant agreed, okay, they will use 50% renewable energy for Phase 2, they don't need to come back. But if there are some reservations, then they might come back. If they use 50%, automatic, you don't need to come back. That I will suggest that. But if there are some issues, there are some reservations, then you can come back to Planning Commission and we can discuss about it. How about that?
I like that.
How
does the applicant feel? Okay, the applicant says that's a good plan. Okay, so would the commissioner like to restate the motion again?
Okay, I recommend that that we approve the conditional use permit with the following condition, that before that at the time, well, before the permit is issued for Phase 2 of the project, that the applicant either voluntarily adopt a 50% renewable electricity sourcing for the hydrogen generation portion of their operation, or they come before the Planning Commission again for a review.
I'll second this third time.
Okay, any discussions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next item is any public presentations? None. Okay, reports of commission, board liaison, and committee. Would anyone like to report on any trainings, travels, etc.? ARC? Commissioner Jain.
I believe I don't really have to come back to the commission, but I decided that I wanted to take 2 classes at the APA conference. One is public art and placemaking, And the other one is a tour of Woodland and how the city has revitalized their downtown. So that's within the $100 budget. But the question that I had was that this Planning Commission was a fairly light agenda. And we had discussed that when we have light agendas, that we would have some education of the public and the commissioners. There are some tools that Transform has created, the nonprofit called Transform, and the woman's name is Nina Rizzo from Transform. She had given a fabulous presentation at the Grand Boulevard Initiative meeting a month ago, and so I suggested that that we invite her to one of our meetings to present, and that didn't happen this time. I'm wondering if that's been scheduled, or if there's been discussions with Transform to have them come in. And I was wondering if our next Planning Commission meeting is expected to be a light agenda. And there were some things that I had suggested that we discuss.
I'm not aware, or I'm not sure what's been calendared so far for the next agenda. If it is light, we can look into scheduling a training. I know this last time the training was judged to be a little too expensive for the budget of the Planning Commission, so we'll have to look for alternatives to what we were originally thinking about. It was on the order of $1,000 is my memory.
To bring Transform in?
To bring in the consultant that we were looking at. I'm not sure if it was Transform or not, honestly.
I see. The other thing is I'm wondering what the process is, because at our last Planning Commission meeting there was someone who was building a new garage, and I asked whether they were going to put in electric vehicle charging in that garage, and I was informed that the city does not currently have a policy requiring that new construction garages are pre-wired for electric vehicles for single family. And I'm wondering, how do we move this idea along? Do we make a formal recommendation of council, get it on the council agenda? What is the process there?
I think a great place for that would be as part of our climate action plan update, that we could add that as an action that we're taking to reduce greenhouse gases. So if we can think of a way to sort of formalize that, that'd be a great place for it. So
can I introduce a resolution now?
Yeah, or you can direct staff to
I would recommend directing staff, because it's not on the agenda, to take that action. So
Can we put
direct
it
staff
on the agenda for next time?
There you go.
So I would like to move that we put it on the agenda for next time. That we consider requiring new construction single-family garages to pre-wire for electric vehicle charging.
Is that a motion we should be making?
And that would be,
a
yeah.
direction to the staff?
It doesn't need a motion, no.
Okay, request to the staff then. Thank you.
Can you repeat that request, please?
Oh, that the update to, I guess we put on the agenda to request staff to put on the climate action plan the requirement that new construction single-family garages are pre-wired for level 2 electric vehicle charging.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. In addition to the trainings that Commissioner Jane suggested, we had a training underway a long time ago about general planning, and related to a relevant topic would be housing requirements, A-bag housing requirements that I think the commission, everyone on the commission should know about. Updates on zoning changes. If we can have the staff discuss about those issues when we have a light agenda, that will be very helpful.
Okay.
Okay, so if you could look into that, that would be great. Okay, so let's move on to the next item. Upcoming agenda items and city council actions.
With the council on the August break, nothing to report at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask, you presented this item about the Los Padres Drive on El Camino, that Summer Hill one. Is that going to be on an agenda, or what was the purpose of?
Oh, the notice of availability has been put out for the Summerhill El Camino project, and that starts the clock for public review of their mitigated neg deck. So you can expect that in the next couple of months.
And can I ask, is council taking action against the city of San Jose over the Stevens Creek and Winchester Urban Village?
The council through an attorney is issued or has sent a letter to the San Jose City Council about the urban village plans and what the state of their environmental review.
Because they passed it yesterday, so does that mean it's settled? Because I'm wondering, are we going to be looking at our general plan now, since San Jose's passed their general plan update along the Stevens Creek and Winchester Boulevard?
So I guess I'm going to take a step back and talk about process for this particular action. That if the city of Santa Clara wanted to contest this action to adopt an urban village plan, in San Jose, as I understand it, the next step is for the city to ask for what's called a request for reconsideration, that you can ask the council to reconsider an approval that they've already made. So the city, to exhaust its administrative remedies, would have to file a request for reconsideration. Without that, the city wouldn't, as I understand it, really have any ability to sue the city of San Jose in the future.
So that would be the next step.
Right.
Would they have time to do that before, you said they're in August recess?
Pardon me?
You said the council is in August recess. Does that screw up that timing?
I think that the city manager could decide to file a request for reconsideration. The city manager's office is aware of that.
So was the city of Santa Clara represented at that particular meeting at San Jose Council when this thing was approved? Did somebody? Okay, thank you.
So I actually had a conversation with Elaine Breeze of Summerhill because I was curious about what's happening at that property. And I was told that that project will come before us at the September 13th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, so yeah.
That's what they told me, so.
Thank you. Okay, so the next commission meeting is on August 23. Is there any motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Back to the council chambers.
Rosa? So, hey, Rosa, is the next meeting at council chambers or here?